to demonstrate quick sort. First, you're going to find the pivot point, which is the middle. And then, you're going to move it to the front of the list. Swap it with the first. And then, you're going to go through the list. And find values that are greater than or less than the pivot point. The pivot point is now at the beginning of the list. The number is 47. We're going to increment through the list. Our new small index is 12. 12 is smaller than 47, so it's going to stay where it is at. Then we're going to move on to 64. 64 is greater than 47, so we're going to move on to 5. 5 is less than 47, so we're going to increment our small index, move it to 64, and swap 5 and 64. Then we're going to look at 32. 32 is smaller than 47. We're going to move our small index to 64 and swap 32 and 64. Then we're going to move on to 75, which is larger than 47. So we're going to move on to 67, which is also larger than 47. 22 is smaller than 47, so we're going to increment our small index up one, which is 64 again, and swap 22 and 64. Beautiful. Then we're going to move on to 9, which is obviously smaller than 47. Move our small index to 75, which is the new small index, and swap it with 9. And now we're going to switch 47 with our small index, which is 9.
And rewrite our list.
So now that 47 has been swapped with 9, all the numbers in front of 47 are greater than 47, and all numbers below 47 are less than 47. So 47 has been sorted. Now we're going to take our first list. We're going to find the pivot point in this list and do the same process all over again with our first list. So 5 is going to go to the front of the list as our pivot point. We're going to compare 5 and 12. 12 is obviously larger than 5. So it's going to stay right where it's at. Then we move on to 9. 9 is also larger than 5, so it's going to stay where it's at. 32 is also larger than 5. It's going to stay where it's at. Same with 22. Now we move on, and 5 has been sorted. We know this because all the numbers to the right of 5 are larger than itself. On to our next list. Our next pivot point is 9. We're going to move 9 to the front of the list. We're going to compare 9 with 12. 12 is larger than 9, so it's going to stay where it's at. 9 is also going to stay where it's at because it is equal to itself. Then we're going to compare with 32, and 32 is larger than 9. 22 is also larger than 9. We now know that 9 is sorted and in the correct place. We move on. Our list becomes smaller. We have 12, 32, 22. Our pivot becomes 32. We move it to the front of the list. We compare 32 with 12. 12 is obviously smaller than 32. So we swap 32 and 12. We move the...
No. Current is 12 and smallest is 12, so it stays where it is, because current and smallest.
Current and smallest are switch.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we increment the small index, which is 12, and the current index, which is 12, so they stay the same. Yeah, forgot about that. Then we move on to 22. 22 is smaller than 32, and we increment the small index to 22, so it stays the same. Yep.
And then,
And then,
so now we know we switch
Oh, now? Oh, yeah, and now we
it's
switch
pivot and smallest.
pivot and smallest.
12, 32.
32
So 32
is in the correct
is
place,
where it's supposed to be.
which is what happened with 14.
Alright, keep going.
Okay, then next, now that we know that 32 has been sorted, we make our list smaller, and 22 becomes our pivot point. 12 is smaller than 22, and the smallest index is equal to the large index, so it stays where it's at. Then we swap the pivot with the small index, swapping 12 and 22. And now we know that 12 and 22 are sorted.
And now we're going to rewrite it all.
And now we're going to rewrite it all. So, now that we have our first list sorted and 47 sorted, we're going to find our pivot point of our last list, which is 64. We're going to move 64 to the front of the list. We're going to compare our pivot, 64, with 67. 67 is larger than 64, so we're going to move our current index to our next spot, which is 75. 75 is also larger than 64, so it's going to stay where it's at. We now know that 64 is sorted because it's smaller than all the things on its right. We're going to move on to our smaller list, which is 67 and 75. 67 is our pivot point. We move it to the front, which it just stays where it's at. We compare it with 75. 75 is larger than 67. So we know that 67 is sorted because 75 is on the right and larger than 67. Now, 75 is its own list, and there's only one element in it, so we know to stop our sort. And we know that 75 has been sorted. And our final sorting of this list is 64, 67, and 75, which, perfect. And now we put all the lists back together.
It's all sorted.
It's all sorted. Yay!